Alright guys, EZA LR Super 17 is here, so we're going to be trying him out. Somehow I've never managed to pull a dupe in this unit in his 4 years of existence, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. We do have him at level 10 links though, and we have him on a Mega Shenron's 220% lead. We do currently have a full rotation of target Goku category units with both Golden Freezers, along with having an extra target Goku category unit in here as well. So we're getting the full 50% attack and defense each time over per target Goku category ally here. And then we've also got the full 17% damage reduction on top of the base 17% damage reduction, along with the 170% defense and the rainbow orb changing as well, which is some pretty nice stuff. The only downside being is Super 17 doesn't link too well with either Golden Freezer. So we are starting with a 491k attack stat, which is fine considering he's going to be stacking by 50% attack every time he uses his 18 key super attack, and 418k defense all in all. Now we're only managed to get him one rainbow orb, which is a little bit of a shame considering for every rainbow orb obtained, he does launch an additional super attack that has a 70% chance to become a super attack, which is of course only up to 2 times. So we've only got the possibility of 1 this turn. So, as I said, that is a bit of a shame. Now, he does start with 200% attack and defense, and does have a chance to crit and damage reduction rate of 17% base built in. And then he does receive an additional key +2 per rainbow orb obtained as well, which is rainbow orb changing is going to help out. And then on 12 key super attack, which are we going to manage to get lucky enough to get the 1 off? No, unfortunately not. But if he did, he would greatly raise attack and defense by 50% attack and then 30% defense for 1 turn, and also lower enemies' defense as well. And then per androids, which you're not going to use because androids is just mudded, target Goku, which of course we have both with 2 golden freezers, or GT bosses category ally attacking in the same turn, which depends on the category that has the most members. He will get 50% attack and defense. So we did have the full stat boost going for him there, which is nice. And then when there's another androids, which again you're not going to use, or target Goku category ally attacking in the same turn, 17 will also gain 170 defense, the extra 17% damage reduction, and also randomly change a certain type of key sphere apart from tech to rainbow orbs as well, which is rainbow orb changing is very, very handy, especially when you consider he does receive 2 extra key per rainbow orb obtained, and then he does need 2 rainbow orbs minimum and also maximum, to be fair, because it's only up to 2 times to get those 2 possible 70% chance of additional supers. So his rainbow orb changing is very, very nice. We do have him set up on a pretty good team when it comes to ticking off each part of his passive, when it comes to using target Goku units, GT boss units, to help him get all the extra stats and buffs he needs to get. It's quite easy to set up. However, what I will say, if you are missing some units, this is going to be very difficult to do. So while it can be quite restrictive, it's also not overly. I mean, it is, but because of the units you can use, it's not like you're forced to use, for example, EZA AGL Golden Freezer and you're like, he's terrible. No, he's very, very good. So that is the good thing. So while it can be a little bit restrictive team building wise, the units you actually get to use are very good. So it kind of balances out in a way. But if you are missing some of these units, like if I pull up target Goku, if you're missing the Tech Golden Freezer and Gogeta, you're then very limited on options. You could go for the Broly units, but again, that could clash with team building. You know, you could use the other units such as, again, EZA AGL Golden Freezer, the new baby if you have him. But then again, if you're then missing the new baby, maybe you didn't get lucky enough to pull him. Maybe you didn't summon for him. You know, something like that along those lines. If one of those things have happened, you know, kind of building up the team with target Goku category units becomes even more difficult, and you struggle to help Super 17 trigger those parts of the passive, which you don't really want to miss out if we're being completely honest. You know, while I don't think Super 17 is going to turn into a terrible, terrible unit if you don't get the full 50% attack and defense per android's target Goku or GT boss category unit attacking in the same turn, I do think missing out on a total of like 100% to 150 attack and defense is a big amount of stats to miss out on, especially early on while you're slowly stacking up that attack. I say slowly, you know, he does get to only stack once because it is only on 18 key. However, it is 50%. So I assume that's going to kind of balance out a little bit. But considering he's not stacking on both 18 and 12 key, considering there's no additionals to help him stack either because there's nothing on 12 key, you know, the extra stats are going to help, especially defensively as well. He's already up to 30 mil. That's because of him being attacked last turn, but he's already up to 30 mil. And that's another 50% attack stack, by the way. We still do have a full rotation of target Goku category units. And, of course, one target Goku category ally in the same turn. So we do have the 170 defense and the full 34% damage reduction in total with his base. He's then going to get hit, which then procs his extra 17% damage reduction. So he's actually kind of chill in this rotation. Of course, double digits on normals. I really want to see how he does on super. The way you would want to line it up, because he does need to be hit to trigger the extra 17% defense. I think it applies immediately. I'm not sure. I didn't get to see it quick enough when he got hit by Kaba there. But for example, if it doesn't, obviously he's only going to have 34%, gets hit. Then once that first initial attack kicks in, kind of like Side EZA Fizz Super Saiyan Bardock from years ago, then the damage reduction will kick in and he will have the full 51%. But I think he gets it immediately. I could be wrong. As I said, I did miss it just then. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see on that front. Do I need to use anyone's active skills here? I don't think I do. I mean, especially because I can get a few tech orbs with Golden Frieza. And we can get some healing going. I feel like a Mega should be okay. I mean, I hope a Mega will be okay. Maybe a Mega won't be okay. Okay, we're back. We're going to pop the domain. And then that actually brings me on to the next bit that I wanted to get to before we were rudely interrupted and died. That 17 is also receiving Key +1 up to 7 and attack, defense, and crit chance up to 70% for every attack received. So I think this time around he's been hit twice. No, 3 times. So we're kind of almost halfway there. 4 more hits and we're going to have the full 7 key and the full 70% attack, defense, and crit chance. So he is gaining a lot of stats from his passive, which we're already up to with the domain and a couple hits and 2 stacks? 1 stack. We're looking at 1.932 million on the attack stat and 615k defense at the start of turn. Now, I could just put a Mega in slot 1, but I'm going to rely on Baby to get the dodge. Fingers crossed. How many rainbow orbs we getting? We are getting 2, which means we do have the potential of the 2 additional super attacks. Hopefully, Dokkan feel like giving them to me because, well, why not? There is dodge by Baby. Can we get another one? There is another one. Good stuff. And we get some stacks on him as well. Don't know what it's been with Dokkan recently. I think our last 3 releases have all been stacking units. So maybe they're really trying to heavily focus units, new units and content around Festival of Battles. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more to do with that mission-wise. I mean, they've already added 2 more. So what's Super 17 putting out this turn with a couple hits and 1 stack? 28.55, and that is also while Omega's domain is active as well. So that's another 50% stack along with 2 additionals. There's 1. We managed to get the second. 19.2 on the 12 key. Can we get the 3rd super attack? Can we get the 2nd additional? We can, up to 28 mil. 20.8 million. So that is 2 30% defense raises as well. Double digits on normals. We're still building the attack up. So it does look like, I saw that, with, especially with like 9 million icons on my screen at once, that the damage reduction is immediate. So initially when I went through his details, I actually got that wrong. I thought it was the way that Super Saiyan Fizz Bardock Side EZA got his damage reduction. But it's actually as soon as he receives an attack, he will get the extra damage reduction. So it's fine. So it's not as important to build up the rest of his damage reduction. However, kind of a catch-22, you still want the rest of his damage reduction as well, so that way he has as much as you possibly can. Considering how hard enemies are hitting nowadays, you kind of want it. So either way, you want as much of his damage reduction prior to him being hit that you possibly can just so you have as much as possible. Again, especially with how hard enemies are hitting nowadays, you're definitely not going to turn your nose up at extra damage reduction. So, but the fact that you can get it immediately and you don't have to be hit, then get it, I think is quite nice. I think it's quite handy. It kind of takes away some of that, you know, unsureness and also that little bit of vulnerability that you're kind of waiting to get the full damage reduction so he can tank the best he possibly can if you were to get it after he got hit. So I do like that it applies immediately. I think we got hit 2-3 times that turn, so I think 1 or 2 more hits, and then we're going to have the full extra key, attack, defense, and crit chance all fully built up, and then we're going to have him fully ready to go, and then we can load up my Omega Shenron's domain, and Super 17 is going to be at the best possible he can be, all while being 55%, which I still think it's crazy that in 4 years I've not managed to pull a single dupe in this unit whatsoever. I don't know how that's happened, but it happened. But one thing I will say, while Super 17 is performing really, really well, his EZA, I knew it was good. You know, his EZA looked really, really good. I knew he was a good EZA on paper. I said this, he looks good. I'm really intrigued to see how he tanks with only 51% damage reduction, which is kind of crazy saying only, considering back in the day, having even 30 was considered a lot. But I mean, he is on 750k defense right now with immediately 34% damage reduction. Then we'll get the extra 17 taking him up to 51. Couple more hits. I mean, you're looking at like 800k defense, and that's all at 55%. And that is with no GT bosses support. We have no support units on this team right now. You know, the EZA Shadow Dragons, maybe even Super EZA AGL Rose, EZA Omega, etc. But I think normals, every normal in the game, he's going to be able to tank completely fine. When it comes to... Actually, who do I want in slot 1? Do you know what? I'm going to put Baby in slot 1 just because it's more worthwhile him being there. And then Rainbow Orb-wise, we got enough for 17 there. I mean, I don't have a lot. Actually, can we just pop... We might as well just pop his active skill, to be fair, because that middle attack, because of Super Baby 2 Scouter, we know isn't going to be a super attack. So we know Super 17 is going to tank it just fine. To be fair, I shouldn't have done that because he could have been hit one more time, which would have helped in his build-up. But I knew his EZA would be good. I did say he looked very good. He looked very, very solid. I'm just really curious, which we're still yet to see even on this rotation again, thanks to Baby Scouter, how he's going to be tanking fully built up with 51% damage reduction on a super. You know, enemies are putting out anywhere from 3.5, 4 million minimum upward on super attacks nowadays. Kaba himself has crits, which makes him even more dangerous. Like, how much is Super 17 going to be tanking for with about 800k defense start of turn, and then, you know, 60% defense raise on 12 key super attacks if you get both additionals, by the way, which more often than not we have actually got. So thank you, Dokkan, for the RNG. How much is he going to be able to tank for? Is it going to be enough to help him survive, or is it just going to be a little bit too little? I mean, that doesn't sound right, but is it just not going to be enough is the case? So that's one thing I do really want to see, but unfortunately Kaba's just not super attacking him. You know, I could have put him in harm's way, but I don't want to rotate him off. I could have put him in slot 1, but realistically you're not going to put Super 17 in slot 1. It's just not, he doesn't have enough at the start of turn to do that. Maybe normals at this point, but that's about it really. So I'm not going to forcibly set him up to die. But I just wonder, when it comes to these big attack stats that we've got in Dokkan in the big 2025, is that amount of damage reduction, is the extra defense he's going to be getting on super attack, along with a domain, is it going to be enough? And then not to mention as well, he's not always going to have his domain up, you know, or we're not always going to have a domain up. At some point it is going to run out. You may run him on Dokkan Fest Baby's team, which only allows you 1 Omega Shenron. So you may only have 1 domain that you may have already run out on. So I've swapped events just so we could build 17 up quicker, which we have. He's now been hit 6 times, 1 more, and he is indeed fully built up. So he's on with Omega Shenron's domain, a 2.62 million attack stat, 820k defense, which will go up by an extra 10% after his final hit. which is very nice. Should be able to tank the AoE just fine. Now, I am going to pop Baby in slot 1, of course, because we want to keep that target Goku category unit with him. But overall, as I said, I'm just very curious to see how 17 does once he gets super attacked, which we're yet to see. No dodge from Baby. Handled the AoE, Super 17, which is good. Finally, Baby's decided to dodge. After taking like 400k worth of damage, I'd rather you not do that again, please. Thank you very much. I will, however, take a couple stacks on Super Baby 2, though. That is for certain. Even though this video isn't about you, but I'll definitely take a triple stack nonetheless. But one thing I did notice, while his EZA is looking really good, like, it is an amazing EZA. 29.4 are up to as well. Final bit of build-up is about to happen. So let's just say with the extra 10%, you're probably looking at about 30 mil on his 18-key super attack. And again, that is while stacking 50% every time he does an 18-key super. Kind of crazy we didn't get one additional super there, considering they both have 70% chances to pop. That's Dokkan being Dokkan. But he's tanking double digits, which is good. I mean, we do have his full damage reduction right now, so we're all good with that. But one thing I did notice while building the team is there's going to be a bit of team clash. First and foremost, you know, you need the units, as I said earlier on, to trigger the first part of his passive to get the full attack and defense per androids, which again, you're not going to use, which doesn't give you a lot of variety. But the target Goku GT boss category units, which, let's just be honest, isn't overly difficult to do in a team like this. If you're running a Megas team, if you're running Baby's team, it's really not a difficult thing to do considering how good the target Goku and GT boss units are. So setting that part up, fairly easy to do. However, even more difficult and a bit more restrictive if you are missing units. For example, the new Baby, a Mega Shenron being the biggest one. It can really affect it. Golden Frieza and Gogeta. Also the AGL Golden Frieza. It can make it a bit more difficult. If you have all of these units at your disposal, even though it is still a restrictive part of his condition in his passive, if you have all of those options, obviously it's going to be less so, but we're not talking about squeezing a terrible unit on the team. We're talking about putting very good units, some of the best EZAs in the game right now, on a team to help Super 17, who's also an amazing EZA himself, so it doesn't feel that bad. But then when you go into the second part of his passive, which is when there is another android or target Goku category ally in the same turn, which you kind of want to do, because then you get the rainbow orb changing, makes it easier for him to get key, especially when he's getting 2 key per rainbow orb, but then also for the additionals to really flesh out his defense, which is going to be very handy against enemies that are doing like 4 million plus on supers. But then that 17% damage reduction to take him up to a total of 51%, which is going to be kind of crucial again in the most difficult content. It starts to clash. So target Goku units are already quite restrictive while running on Baby's team, while running on a Mega's team. I said the upside being the target Goku category units are very good. The new Baby, Golden Frieza and Gogeta, EZA AGL Gogeta, or sorry, EZA AGL Golden Frieza, and then some of the Broly units from Worldwide. Maybe less so those, but they are still potentially options, even though they are aging a bit. If you are missing 1 or 2 of those units, a already restrictive part of his passive, because again, let's face it, androids is mudded and has been that way for years. You're not touching android category units, not that really any of them can go on either Baby or Mega Shenron's lead in the first place, which is the best place to run Super 17. Immediately you find yourself struggling to fulfill those parts of his passive, which are already quite restrictive, just because you maybe didn't pull for a unit, just because maybe you may have missed a unit, and it can really hurt your team building. And then not only that as well, which we do have his active skill, which he needs to be hit 7 times to trigger, and then considering this is an old one, we're going to let it play out normally, but I'm waiting to see some big damage. You flick that hair back. But then, for example, the new Baby, if you pulled for him, if you got him, he's a target Goku unit. He fulfills both parts of... That's actually really good damage, by the way, over a 30 mil crit. He fulfills both parts of his passive, which is great. But then, if you are running dual Babies, which will be a little bit more easier to do because you have 1 extra unit to play with, especially running dual Babies who of course count as 2 target Goku category units, but also in this case, and you might see where I'm going with this, 2 corroded body and mind units for Baby. But then if you're running on a Mega Shenron's team, you only possibly have 1, and those 2 start to clash, because Baby in 1 rotation need 2 more corroded body and mind units. Again, if you're running Baby's lead, you have an extra 1, so if you float 1, it's a bit easier to do, or you just have 1 Baby that has his boost, has his full damage reduction and crit chance for the corroded body and mind units, and then you have another that just held Super 17, but then that means one of those babies doesn't have the damage reduction, which will hurt him. So it's a catch-22. But then Baby needs those, whereas Super 17 needs target Goku or GT bosses, so it starts to make both of them clash, and you kind of then have to pick and choose who you prioritize to then essentially get the damage reduction. You know, 17's isn't as much as Baby. Baby has a ton of dodge, which means you don't overly need it, but then if you take on like Red Zone Pure Saiyan's Broly, where dodge is cancelled, dodge is nullified, you kind of want the damage reduction because you need all of that stacking to go with the damage reduction because you've got no dodge to rely on. If you can rely on dodge, you might want to prioritize Super 17. However, Super 17 doesn't get as much damage reduction as Baby does, so you might want to prioritize Baby. And that is if you have the new Baby in the first place. So as I said, team building does start to clash a bit. And then if you look outside of the Mega Shenron's lead, outside of Baby's leads, if you're not running them there because you can't, or maybe you're missing some units, Super 17 doesn't really have much else place to go, if we're being really honest. But overall, I do really like this EZA. I think the amount he can stack on his attack is a big help in long content. Of course, he's going to be really fun to use in Festival of Battles, or just longer content to see where you can get him to. That 50% also helps, considering he only stacks on only 18 ki. All in all, he looks like he tanks really well. Even at 55% fully built up, you're talking over 800k defense with all of his damage reduction, which that applying immediately rather than being hit then getting it, I think is really nice. I'm just still intrigued, because we didn't get to see it in this video, how he would tank one of the harder hitting enemy super attacks. But all in all, he's looking very solid, can deal with all normals in the game, goes on some already very stacked categories, especially a Mega Shenron's lead, Baby's lead, really works well off the domain, works really well in a category that at one point, not that long ago, a few months back, was kind of dead in the water but had so much potential, and is now one of the better extreme type categories in the game. It's just that team building, as I said, especially with the new Baby, if you have him of course, really does clash. And those restrictive part of his passives are great if you have the units, of course, especially because they are very good units to begin with. But if you don't, especially with not being able to use Android units, because that category is just dead right now, you become really stuck at giving 17 all of his extra passive buffs, and he really does clash with the new Dokkan Fest Baby when team building. So you do have to pick and choose who you do prioritize. If there was a way to get it both set up, by all means let me know in the comments. I didn't really see a way that I could set up a great team for the content we're taking on while also fulfilling everyone's conditions. You know, it's kind of a checklist we got to tick off. If only we could use that EZA Super Baby 2 and he wasn't banned and everything. That would be a big help for both units. But here we are, Dokkan. Please, can we change that at some point? Please. What's the point of having a sick EZA that we can't use? But all in all, really do like this EZA, even though that is that glaring annoyance when it does come to team building. But I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments, so let me know. But I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take care, have a great day, and peace.